My wife is pregnant with our second child, but I am still sterile, and she doesn't know. I exposed her to everyone. We spent 2 years together in college and got married the fall after we graduated. We spent 2 years exploring our relationship and finally settled down and were ready to raise a family. She got off birth control and her desire for intimacy took off, but it took 3 years for us to get pregnant. We finally got a beautiful girl. After a couple of months, my wife got back on birth control and had a hard time with it. Her doctor switched her meds several times, but she had bad side effects with each one. We talked about it and were unsure if we wanted another child. Since it was easier for me to get a vasectomy reversed later if we decided to have more children, I had the operation. That was 3 years ago. After coming off birth control, my wife has felt better, and we are doing it worry-free since we can no longer get pregnant. We are actually doing it more now than when we were in college. Then, 3 weeks ago, my wife was late for her period, which isn't that unusual for her. Then I noticed her breasts were a little tender and she started showing signs of morning sickness. Now I know there have been cases of nature reversing vasectomies, so I went to the doctor and had my sperm count checked. The verdict was I'm still sterile, but I didn't tell my wife. My wife finally went to her doctor and confirmed she was pregnant, and so she had me go to my doctor to get tested. I didn't go right away because I was literally sick from the stress of the situation. I had all sorts of sick scenarios going through my head. In the end, I got retested and took my daughter in and had a DNA test done. I got both test results back today and got violently ill after reading them. Yes, I'm still sterile, and no, my daughter isn't mine. When my wife got home, I showed her my test, and she denied any wrongdoing, saying that there was a problem with the test. I showed her the test from last week, and she broke down crying. I finally got it out of her who she had slept with and that it only happened once and the protection must have failed. I made her tell me the story 3 times, and each time I asked her if that was the whole truth and if there was anything else that she needed to tell me because another lie would mean we were through. She said that was the only time and she had never done anything like that before. I told her how much this hurt me and asked her how she could do this to our family and if it was worth it. I asked her if she wanted a divorce, and she pleaded with me to forgive her and put this behind us. I said I couldn't raise someone else's child and asked her if she would be willing to terminate the pregnancy in order to stay together. She cried the rest of the night, but when we went to bed, she said she would do whatever it took to save our marriage. I never brought up the DNA test. I will contact a lawyer next week to see what my options are about if I have to pay child support on our first child. If she had come clean about the father of our first child, I could have swallowed my pride and tried to work to forgive her, but she thought she was in the clear and didn't need to confess to anything else. There's no telling what I'll never know. Lawyer update. My lawyer is awesome. She had me bring in a bunch of paperwork, bank statements, and my medical and DNA results and had me tell her my story. Her assistant sat in with us and took notes while my lawyer went through my documents. After I finished, she asked a few questions and spelled out my options. I live in an at-fault state, which is good and bad. Good as in it gives us leverage, bad as it takes longer and is much more expensive. In the case of the first child, if my wife agrees to sign the papers, my liability for child support is an easy fix. If she doesn't agree, then a court-ordered DNA test and a judgment from the court can remove me without my wife's consent. Either way, I will most likely not have to pay child support. One way is just more expensive than the other. Since my wife has a good job and earns close to what I do, she didn't think the judge would award her any alimony. All of that, plus dividing up property and other things, can be negotiated before a judge gets involved. The bad news was that due to the holidays, they couldn't have the papers ready before Christmas, but definitely would before the end of the year. She advised me to say nothing until she got served. She gave me a list of things to do before and after Christmas before they served my wife. One thing they did point out was that since we were actively trying to have a baby, there was a possibility that my wife didn't know that the child wasn't mine. My wife has an appointment with her OB tomorrow. Update. I met my sister at my house, and we started moving my stuff to her house while the divorce goes through, or at least until my STBXW leaves and I get possession of the house. We took 4 carloads to her house and came back for the rest. My sister felt it important for her to be there for support and as a witness. I also moved the nanny cam into the living room so it could record everything in the cloud. At about 10:45 a.m., I got a text from the lawyer saying she had been served. I sent her an email saying that I'm at the house when she is ready to talk. A couple of minutes later, I got a text from my wife saying why? Blah blah blah. So I resent the first text and waited for her to get home. She sent several texts and voicemails. They don't mention anything about cheating, just how she thought we were working this out and she thought we would sit down and have a conversation before proceeding with a divorce. Playing the family card and how this will devastate the child and our families. How she feels betrayed, that was a good one. She was still sharing her location, and it took her 20 minutes before she left work. She then stopped at a nearby Walgreens for a few minutes. The purpose of the stop at Walgreens became clear as a police car pulled in behind her in the driveway. According to the officers, she got the police there because she said she was afraid and that we had guns in the house. I showed the officers my empty gun safe and said that I had removed them to another secure location. We went back to the living room and I showed my wife the paternity test that I had done that showed her daughter was not mine. Her response was denial and disbelief, which appeared genuine. She broke down and cried for about 10 minutes. I told her this was the final straw and why I wanted the divorce. At about that time, the police officers reminded me to keep it civil and made their exit after I told them I was leaving soon to stay at my sister's house. When I asked who the child's father was, she claimed she didn't know. I asked if there were that many guys she was sleeping with or if she just didn't know his name. I asked how many times she had cheated on me between pregnancies. She said it was just the 2 of them. I told her that I had said earlier if she didn't tell the whole truth that I was done. I reminded her I also told her that I wouldn't raise someone else's child. And that she had better figure out who the real father was because I wasn't paying child support for someone else's baby. She wanted to know what we were going to tell our daughter, and I said that was up to her because this was her mess, and I wasn't taking the blame or cleaning it up for her. I drafted a couple of emails last week, one for our friends and family with copies of all the test results and reasons why I was asking for a divorce, and the other for my wife with copies of the same tests along with what I knew and things that I had told her previously. I had to run it through my lawyer and make a couple of edits before she signed off on it. I sent copies to all our friends and relatives when she pulled into the driveway this afternoon. Most of the feedback has been one-sided and very colorful. In the end, I told her if she had been truthful, we might have been able to work things out. But I couldn't trust a lying serial cheater, and I told her if she had gotten her tubes tied instead of me getting a vasectomy, she might have gotten away with it. I told her she needed to get a lawyer so we could move forward and start to heal. Update 2. We had our second meeting with the lawyers today, and we signed off on almost everything except the house. We're still waiting for an appraisal to come back and figure out the split. Motions got filed today, and a court-ordered paternity test was scheduled for all 3 of us. Since STBXW didn't fight me on everything, we filed a no-fault divorce petition. If everything goes right, I get the house back on February 15th, and the divorce will be final on April 5th. The lawyers did a better job keeping us separated and the conversation between the 2 of us to a minimum. I was a little worried when she came in, pale and with no energy to speak of. I couldn't tell if it was lack of sleep or maybe overmedicated. She just stared out the windows as the lawyers read everything to us before we signed some of the papers. Walking out felt like I had shed a giant weight from around my neck. HR got me signed up for therapy tomorrow. My boss had put a bottle of champagne on my desk, offered me some time off if I needed it, but I told him I was excited to get back to work. OP about father of the 4-year-old daughter. She told me his name. I remember meeting him on a lake trip. That was the only time I remember seeing him. I don't know if she has contacted him or done a paternity test or not. I didn't ask for any details, and I really don't care at this point. I'm not sure I would believe anything she told me anyway. OP about father of the recent pregnancy. No, the guy that fathered her daughter we met over 4 years ago. The recent AP she had only known a short time. Different parts of the country also. OP about leaving the 4-year-old daughter. I could never be the kind of father she needs. She is a carbon copy of my ex-wife. Every time I look at her, it reminds me of her mother and what she did to me. I'll miss her, but this is something I don't think I'll get over. Plus, I would have to see my ex, and that won't be a good thing either. OP about wife's reaction after the D-Day till she got served. She totally tried to rug sweep the latest pregnancy, saying it was a one-time thing and that we could get past this. Looking back, she tried to smother me with affection. I mean, our bedroom life was pretty good, but she was going the extra mile to initiate and perform above her usual standard. She was always a good partner, but she went out of her way to be agreeable and not be critical, even of things she had complained about before. Final update. My ex got her share of the equity on the house and has already moved into her new apartment. I move back in tomorrow. The court-ordered DNA test came back, and the judge has approved the motions to terminate my parental rights and obligations. The divorce won't be final until April, but for all intents and purposes, I'm free. The only contact I have with my ex is messages through my lawyer or meetings at the lawyer's office with her present. I blocked the ex and some of her family and friends. She has said she wants to sit down and talk at some point, but my lawyer said it should wait until after the divorce is final. I had dinner with AP's wife again as we keep each other up to date on our ex-spouses. I almost feel sorry for him. She got him fired and is determined to drag out the divorce and inflict as much pain as possible.